Morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Church of Auckland. We have been continuously gathering as a congregation here for the past 115 years, and we're happy you're here. If you are a visitor with us today, please realize that our service is not complete until we've had our sacrament of hospitality, also known as morning tea. We hope you will be able to stay and enjoy it with us. Now, my opening words include a description of our guest speaker today. And there's some people up in front who actually know him, and that's why they're laughing. Anyway. Now, I'll also read a story Mike has asked me to read to help you with some insight into the nature of his mind. You're going to love it. Now, Mike Allwright and I have been friends since early 2003, during our Taranaki days together. Mike, as you will note, is a Salvation Army officer, Major Mike Allwright. He was captain when I first met him on the street in Stratford, oddly enough, outside a coffee shop. That's an in-joke, because Mike is a self-professed coffeeholic. I was new to Stratford with my family, recently arrived from Cambodia. With my 3 kids in school and Sharon earning the daily bread at the local maternity unit, I was footloose and fancy-free and lonely. Walking down the footpath, I said hi. He said hi. 45 minutes later, we were still standing there. Needless to say, Mike is an interesting guy. As I recall, he was not in uniform at the time, but I soon found out his function in town, and he seamlessly found out most of my life history. Mike was the leader of this local Salvation Army church. He was instrumental in their having a building to worship in, but he actually did most of his pastoral care on the street. Thank goodness. Mike Allwright is a classic polymath. I mean, he's good at lots of stuff. The things I know he's good at, and this most likely is a partial list, are long-haul truck driver, whitewater rescue by canoe, auto mechanic and restoration, crisis management, as in the Christchurch earthquake level crisis. He is an international recognition for his work there. And coffee aficionado. Oh, he can also successfully manage the efforts of a diverse congregation and an op shop. Mike has had his own mountains to scale, valleys to cross, which contribute to his own story. He tells lots of stories. He knows lots of stories and their powers. He will share some of what he has learned this morning. For your information, I have no idea what he's going to say. Oh, yes, he does. Oh, yes, he does. Now, Mike's story that he wants me to read to you. This is Goldilocks and the Three Bears by Roald Dahl. It's in rhyme. I think you'll know. Okay. This famous wicked little tale should never have been put out on sale. It's a mystery to me why loving parents cannot see that this is actually a book about a brazen little crook. Had I the chance, I wouldn't fail to clap young Goldilocks in jail. Now just imagine how you'd feel if you had cooked a lovely meal, delicious porridge, steaming hot, fresh coffee in a coffee pot, with maybe toast and marmalade, the table beautifully laid. One place for you, one for Dad, another for your little lad. Then Dad cries, "Golly gosh, gee whiz! Oh, cripes, how hot this porridge is. Let's take a walk along the street until it's cool enough to eat." He adds, a morning stroll is good for people on the whole. It makes your appetite improve. It also helps your bowels to move. No proper wife would dare to question such a sensible suggestion. Above all, not at breakfast time when men are seldom at their prime. No sooner are you down the road than Goldilocks, that little toad, that nosy, thieving little louse, comes sneaking in your empty house. She looks around, she quickly notes 3 bowls brimful of porridge oats. And while still standing on her feet, she grabs a spoon and starts to eat. I say again, how would you feel if you had made this lovely meal and some delinquent little tot broke in and gobbled up the lot? But wait, that's not the worst of it. Now comes the most distressing bit. You are, of course, a house-proud wife, and all your happy married life you had collected lovely things like gilded cherubs wearing wings and furniture by Chippendale bought at some famous auction sale. But your most special valued treasure, that piece that gives you endless pleasure, is one small children's dining chair, Elizabethan, very rare. It is, in fact, your joy and pride passed down to you on Grandma's side. But Goldilocks, like many freaks, does not appreciate antiques. She doesn't care, she doesn't mind, and now she plonks her fat behind upon this dainty, precious chair, and crunch! It busts beyond repair. A nice girl would at once exclaim, "Oh dear, oh heavens, what a shame." Not Goldie. She begins to swear. She bellows, "What a lousy chair," and uses one disgusting word that luckily you've never heard. I dare not write it, even hint it. No one would ever print it. You'd think by now this little skunk would have sense to do a bunk. But no, I very much regret she hasn't nearly finished yet. Deciding she would like a rest, she says, "Let's see what bed is best." Upstairs she goes and tries all 3. Here comes the next catastrophe. Most educated people choose to rid themselves of socks and shoes before they clamber into bed. But Goldie didn't give a shred. Her filthy shoes were thick with grime and mud and mush and slush and slime. Worse still, upon the heel of one was something that a dog had done. I say once more, what would you think if all this horrid dirt and stink were smeared upon your eider down by this revolting little clown? The famous story has no clues to show the girl removed her shoes. Oh, what a tale of crime on crime. Let's check it for a second time. Crime 1, the prosecution's case. She breaks and enters someone's place. Crime 2, the prosecutor notes, she steals a bowl of porridge oats. Crime 3, she breaks a precious chair belonging to the baby bear. Crime 4, she smears each spotless sheet with filthy messes from her feet. A judge would say without a blink, 10 years hard labor in the clink. But in the book, as you will see, the little beast gets off scot-free. While tiny children near and far shout, "Goody good, hooray, hurrah, poor darling Goldilocks," they say. Thank goodness that she got away. Myself, I think I'd rather send young Goldie to a sticky end. "Oh, Daddy," cried the baby bear, "my porridge is gone. It isn't fair." "Then go upstairs," the big bear said. "Your porridge is upon the bed. But as it's inside Mademoiselle, you'll have to eat her up as well." Mike, Allwright. Now it's time for Mike to speak, but I wanted to let you know that Mike likes to talk with people. And so he has asked for the opportunity to have a talk back after his talk rather than the meditation. So be prepared to enjoy the conversation. Michael?
So today I'm going to tell a story that still happens today. Can you hear me okay? Awesome. David, can you hear me?
Not a word.
Awesome. That's great. A number of years ago, I went to the Salvation Army Training College to become a minister. And they had a preaching course, and I failed it. Because when I read the Bible, they said, no, it didn't say that. Oh, okay. And every time I read the Bible and what I saw was insights, I was told I was wrong. And that was okay. So I said to the Salvation Army, give me a couple of years. Let me go out and attempt. And so I did. And after a couple of years, I went back to their training college and tried their preaching course and failed. The reason I failed is they changed the way they taught. And so I said to the Salvation Army, let me go out and just try this new way for a couple of years, and I'll come back. Actually sounds like the Three Little Pigs, doesn't it? And so I went back to the training college and failed because they had changed it to the way that I was doing it originally. And so I have the privilege of failing the preaching course for the Salvation Army 3 times. And I'm proud of it. Because what I do is I look for what I look for, and I look for insights. I've been taught to read between the lines. Go deep. Find your understanding. And so this morning I want to share a story on love. Love that was abused in many points. And there's a story, it comes out of the Bible, but I've extended it. I've gone between the lines. I've dreamt the dreams, lived the nightmares, and to see the insights. And so I don't want to offend anybody, but I do want to offend some people because it's about love and sometimes the abuse of love. So let's start the story. Excuse me for a minute. It's getting hot already. I get excited. So once upon a time, many, many years ago, this couple had a child, a beautiful little girl. Now, it wasn't just a beautiful little girl. It was one of those beautiful. Those babies that stood out as real beauty. Not just a mother's beauty, a family's beauty, but this is a baby to be shown off, to be taken around. People used to come to see this beautiful little girl, and the parents were so proud. And people came and they wanted to be friends because they wanted to associate with the family and this beautiful, she was a stunner. Would have won any competition if they had competitions in those days. And she grew up slowly and her beauty increased. Day by day, year by year. And the little children wanted to be her friends because she was so beautiful. And the little children used to argue about who was her closest friend because they wanted to be known to be with the beautiful young girl. And the years went on and her beauty grew. And the children, who also grew, started to have competitions about who could be close. And then it got a little bit nasty about who can we push away so we could be close. Because you can only have so many friends. And everyone wanted to be the friendliest person to this beautiful little girl. And as other children were pushed away, because she needed to be in the in crowd, they became hurt. And there was a pain growing in them because they weren't allowed to be friends anymore with this girl. She didn't make the decision, but the other friends did. The other friends pushed her away so she could be in the right crowd. And it seemed her life was slowly being controlled by everybody else. As a teenager, she would have been the cheerleader, the one who stood out the front, the queen of the prom. Her beauty was so much. But behind the scenes, she was so lonely. Because her friends controlled her, told her what to wear, told her where to go, told her how to act, because she had to be in the in crowd, and this is what the in crowd did. The other friends who wanted to be a friend couldn't be. And they were pushed away more and more. Because this beautiful girl had to associate with the right people. And years went on, and her beauty grew. And then, of course, in those days, they didn't have the jock, the head rugby player, the man of men amongst young men. But there was. And she had to be, if she was the queen of the prom, he was the king of the prom. So, they would have danced together. And of course, it was just automatic that they would have to fall into a relationship. Whether she wanted or not, they would have to. Because that's what happened. Things were controlled. Now, you want to ask where her parents was. Well, they loved it. Because she was so beautiful, they were so proud. They allowed things to happen. They would invite people around, and people would want to come round to the house just to talk with them, to be in the same house, to see this beautiful young lady. Well, eventually this young lady and this man got married. And that was great status. He didn't have the beauty, but he was the man, and his parents were rich. And so the, what do they call it, the payment, I've forgotten the word already, for the bride was great. The dowry. The status was even better. The two families came together. The dilemma was the young man didn't love the girl. He just wanted the looks. To walk down the road with her next to him. Look at me. The type of, I'm going to put this on the mantelpiece. And life carried on. She wasn't happy. She wasn't loved. In fact, the young girl became this young woman who became abused. Because she didn't perform to the expectations of the husband. didn't always look the part, didn't always perform the way she should be performing as the best of the best should perform. And what happened, she became very, very lonely. Their friends were all the in crowd, kept her in the in crowd. She wanted to go make friends with some of her old friends of the past, but that wasn't allowed because they weren't in the in crowd. And so this relationship went nowhere. This marriage went nowhere. Now, in every story, you need the criminal, don't you? The bad person. And there was one, a young man who just started to take a little bit of interest, would talk to her, just start small conversations, just ask her how things were going. Nothing sinister about that. But their friendship grew, and he wasn't in the in crowd. And the dilemma then was, he couldn't be seen with her, and she couldn't be seen with him. And so as time went on, the secret relationship grew. And for the first time, this young lady thought she knew what love was, thought she knew what real friendship was, thought she knew what companionship really was. But this man thought something different. Which ended up, the relationship got into a sexual relationship. The affair grew in secret. No one knew, but someone did. And what started to happen was some of the old friends, not the in crowd, started to notice, where is she today? I haven't seen her about. Do you know what's happening? No. Oh. Did you see her go down that street? Oh, I wonder what she's up to. And they started talking about her. And they started to be a little bit nosy. And they started to find out and just question and look. And follow discreetly, of course. Until one day, one realised that she was having an affair. And the gossip started. Not to the family, of course, not to the in crowd, but the gossip started to those who were jealous, those who had lost the friendship, those who wanted to be friends but were kicked out. And so the gossip had this little bit of malicious intent. This is wrong. What could we do to get her back? What should we do? And one day, just one day, an incredible opportunity came. And one day, these women caught her in the act of adultery. That's what the Bible says. And they dragged her out. Now, we need to put the story in context now. If you're caught in the act of adultery, I want to tell you, most of the times you're naked, or very little clothes on. Why was it the woman who dragged her out? Because the man wasn't. The man wasn't. See, the culture of the day, the woman couldn't do anything to the man, but they could to the woman. Don't get upset, woman. It's just part of the culture, you know. It's the way it is, ladies. So it's... And so she was dragged out. But from now, I think what happened was they wanted to inflict their punishment. So they dragged her out in the street, humiliated her, beat her, pushed her around. Still happens today. Put her on display. Now then I want you to imagine the family gets involved. And they start to hear the story. And the beatings could increase. Imagine now the husband gets involved. And the rest of the family. Now in those days it was stoning. That was the punishment. And this young lady would have been dragged to the stoning pit. You see, in those days, they had a specific place in town for stoning. It wasn't really a pit, it was a little indentation. And in those days, there were specific rules about stoning. Only certain people could stone. Only a certain number of stones could be thrown. You can survive a stoning. And so you want to imagine she has been dragged into the centre of the town towards the stoning pit. The stones were being gotten ready. Because normally after a stoning, they don't clean up the stones, they just leave the stones in the stoning pit. So they would have been pulled out. At the same time, you want to imagine this woman was getting abused and getting pushed around, semi-naked, if not totally naked, totally humiliated. And the story at that point gets to a point where you've got to put it on hold. Because there's another story happening at the same time. And this is the story about the prophet Jesus at the time, believed to be the Messiah, the one who was going to change the world. And yet, the church at the time, the Pharisees, saw a great opportunity to bring him down and to bring her down and to make them look good. And so they used this opportunity to grab the woman, don't care about her, drag her to the prophet Jesus and stand her there and say, this woman's committed adultery and the rules state she has to be stoned. And at that point, and I like this part of the story, Jesus did nothing. He paused, he stopped, and he looked at the dirt. In fact, he actually crouched down and started to write in the dirt and draw pictures or something. And a lot of theologians, they want to figure out, what did he do? I'm pretty simple. I think he wanted time and he didn't want to look at the woman. He needed to concentrate on something else. My reason for that was, if he's the Messiah, if he's the prophet, and the church is trying to catch him out, you imagine him looking at a naked woman and how they could use that against him. And so he wiped temptation from himself. He wiped temptation against the church, the Pharisees at the time. And he just stopped. He paused. And he drew in the dirt. The church, the Pharisees at the time, kept badgering him. What would you do? She deserves to be stoned. Should we stone her? And again, I love this. Okay. For those of you who've done something wrong, you throw the first stone. For those of you who are perfect, you haven't made a mistake. Think about the situation. And slowly, people started to leave. Now I want you to imagine this, that it would have started with the stone throwers, all right? Because they were there with the intent to throw stones, the family, those who had the right. And it would have started with the older men, because they had the wisdom to start to see the whole picture, not just the here and now. And it would have got to the point, and I imagine this, the mothers of the younger men grabbing them by the ear and dragging them away. Don't you dare. There's something here beyond. And the place went quiet. Now, not everybody left. There were still witnesses. There were still people around. But she would have been standing there all by herself, naked, semi-naked, by herself, all alone. And then Jesus looked up and looked into her eyes. I don't know if you've ever looked at someone with real love and just looked into their eyes. The window of the soul. The part where you look into the depths of their heart through their eyes. That's what I imagined. I look into my wife's eyes, let's not go down that road, but, I look in my kids' eyes and I just love them. And I can see the love. But I imagine love beyond my understanding of Jesus looking into her eyes. And what does he say? Where are those who are here to condemn you? They've gone. Then I don't do it either. Go. Different translations says, and sin no more. That word I struggle with quite a bit. Change your lifestyle. Find out the truth. Search for real love. And that was the end of the story. But was it? Because I'm the man who asked the question. So what happened next? What happened next? Did they just leave her standing there with no clothes on? Did some of Jesus' followers come and put a garment around her? Did she go back to her family? Did she, what? See, I don't know. There are many stories of what it could be. I don't know. But what I know is I think for the first time in this lady's life, she experienced love. True love. The love that we look for. The love that is the foundation of this church. And I encourage you to keep looking for love, acting in love, sharing in love, but never let the manipulation of love enter in, because I know that's not right. So I want to thank you, folks. It's a great story. It's just a story, but it happens today. And it's still wrong. It happens in our kids. It happens in relationships all around us. And it's still wrong. And I believe we are to be the light that reveals the love that is pure and innocent and holy. Something to ponder over as we journey through our life together. So folks, that's me, that's my story. There are parts of the story that's in me, there are parts of the story that's around me. I see it every day. It still happens today. So I'm into discussion.
I've got the microphone. Anybody want to talk to Mike? Yeah.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for the... Is it on? Yep. Thank you for your story. It was really, really well told. And it's still happening, yes. Yeah. I left my husband many years ago and left the children with him. I walked out. And people didn't know our story, and yet they wouldn't talk to me. I walked down on the street, people would just walk past and pretend they hadn't seen me. And it's the most hurtful thing. How can we judge? I'm not asking. I'm saying, how can we judge others when this happens?
One of the things that I have at the bottom of my emails And I'm learning. I've got it wrong so many times. Communication, the power of communication, it's the art of listening to understand, not listening to reply. And so many times in my life, and I've had part of my journey has been very horrendous. It's people have listened to respond in the appropriate way, not the right way. They haven't understood. And I think for us, we listen to understand. And that's a hard one.
Do you think that judgment is a natural thing that we all do, that we have to fight?
The answer is yes. The answer is yes. I'm lucky wearing a uniform. I don't have to make the question, what am I going to wear today? And so simple as that. We judge each other. We're conditioned of our upbringing. And that's why that poem at the beginning, I wanted, it's a horrible story, but we love it. We have been taught to judge in certain ways, and it's wrong. But it's natural too.
It's interesting because I was thinking about a time about 20, 30 years ago where the media actually stirs a lot of stuff too. It's very emotive.
Mm-hmm.
We knew a man who, he and his wife had parted. He was the stepfather of a young teenage girl, and he was the most amazing stepfather. He was fabulous. He got a brain tumour and he didn't have very long to live, and he took her without talking to the wife, and the media made it kidnapping, and he went off into the bush. He wanted to have his last few days, like a really nice trip with her into the bush, and the media made it to be something just horrible. Even his former wife, her mother, her father came out and said that he'd be fine. People who knew him said he'd be fine, everything. But people were actually really happy to jump on the bandwagon of, no, this is, it's not nice, and it's, yeah. And yet it was actually just beautiful love. And he died not that long afterwards, and she'd had a wonderful time with him. But nobody actually the media never ever talked about that. So, yeah, things get skewed lots of times, I think.
I totally agree.
How easy do you think it is for people to feel trapped in their story and unable to create a new one for themselves?
Can you just repeat that again? I heard part of it.
How easy do you think it is for people to feel trapped in their own story and feel unable to create a new one for themselves?
It's a good question. You've got a good... 2 years ago, 2 years ago, within the Salvation Army, I was the head of the earthquake recovery in Christchurch. I'd been doing it for 5 years. I had oversight of the emergency services for the South Island, the social services for the South Island, and I suffered burnout. And burnout is not a good thing to do. And the medication the doctor put me on, my brain, I couldn't stop my brain I couldn't sleep, created depression. The medication created depression. And I got trapped. And spiraled out of control in my own story. The one thing that got me out of the depths of where I was going to was my wife. Great lady. You should meet her sometime. Absolutely love her. She's good. Best wife I've ever had. Only wife I've ever had. Couldn't handle another one, but... And she used to stop and she used to sort of grab and look into my eyes and say, I love you. That was it. And how do I put it? It's like the heart of God, the love of God. That's all I could see. And I lived for it. She still does it. Just keeps reminding me time and time again. I'm a mere male, I got a lot of faults. And she started to create my new story. It's very difficult to do that. And I believe the only way to do it is through love, genuine love of people. I don't know if I could get into another story, but sheep are a fascinating animal. And a hermit sheep is a lost sheep. And you cannot go out and get a hermit sheep by itself. You actually have to take a flock out and surround the hermit and bring the whole lot back together. It's a very... the study of sheep is fascinating. But I actually see that for us too. We are lost souls. We can't get it right ourselves. We need the family, the flock, the church, the community to surround us with love and journey with us back into normality. Very difficult to create a new story yourself when you're locked into the old. I hope that.
Anybody else?
Tēnā koutou katoa. I'm Sandy, and I just want to relate back that story about trapped in your own stories, and that's because it's of you. But when you testify in the name of Jesus Christ, the power of love will come over you because you're speaking to Him of all your stories. And when we talk about the woman that got stoned in this story, who are we to cast the first stone? When we talk about the judgment this lady's talking about, who are we to cast the first stone? And a lot of us still, have in our life. And I, for one, am going to say, sometimes I judge when I'm not asked to judge. But I wanted to get up and speak, especially for my brother here, who was my minister. And I saw the many roads that you and your wife walked. And she is a woman of wisdom. And he was a man of coffee and knowledge and love. It was there on the streets in Stratford that Mike's story came alive. And I was one person that grabbed it because that's where we did all our mentoring over coffee. How simple, instead of sitting in the dwelling of a building. So your love for people, Mike, was there, but his love to become to know Māori, may I say that? We learned to walk together in love because he was my brother in Christ, and God taught me to love him because I came from a different background. But today we stand in hand in hand and love Jesus for who he is. And I know that Mike, your journey comes from if he had to testify his story, you would fall over. If I had to testify my story, you would fall over. So sometimes, yes, we do get trapped in our stories, but we know that when we testify in the name of Jesus Christ of how great he is, and it's not about us, and it's not about, it's just about loving unconditionally. And you wear that name here, Aroha, which I reflect back to love. You wear it well here. So that's your fellas, people, loving people. That's what you follow, the love. And that's who Jesus is, love. He is kind. He is not self-gratification. He is not of himself. He's for the people. He came on this earth to die to save us. So I just want to say thank you for allowing us to be here tonight. Thank you for my friend Sharon, who I love dearly. I love her husband dearly because Jesus taught me to love unconditionally. And today I'm in your church, just listening to the word. So to my brother, Te aroha, te whakapono, me te rangima, I e tata
you, Sandy.
Thank you very much.